Right, wonderful. Okay, so a little bit more about CCI if you don't know about the Center for Cultural Innovation. So we're founded in 2001 to promote knowledge sharing, networking, and financial independence for individuals in the arts by providing business training, grants, and incubating innovative projects that create new program knowledge, tools and practices for artists in the field, and conditions that contribute to realizing financial self-determination. And you can learn more about us at cciarts.org, which I'll place in the chat and encourage you all to check out more about our work. We also have offices in San Francisco and in LA, but our staff actually works remotely across the US. And today I am calling in from Oxnard, California, also known as the unceded land of the Chumash people. And with that nod to the land that I'm calling in from, and especially the braiding sweetgrass call out in the chat, I'd actually also like to take a moment to honor the Chumash peoples on whose land I'm now living, and the elders, both past and present, who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. I come from ancestors who persisted through waves of colonization, and I want to recognize that this land acknowledgement does not exist in a past tense or historical context, and that colonialism is a current ongoing process, and we must stay vigilant to our present participation. So I'm very grateful to be a guest on the unceded land of the Chumash peoples, where I learn, I laugh, and I grow roots with my new family. And I do this in homage and in conversation with the land of my people in Bataan, Philippines, across the Pacific Ocean. If you're not aware of the Indigenous history of the lands that you're signing in from, I'm going to place a link in the chat so that you can learn more about it, please. And so before I hand it off to our amazing facilitators, I'd also really like to share, why is CCI doing this work in the Web3 space? What brought us into this space? Why did we commission Alex Glancy to author NFTs, smart contracts, and DAOs, a resource for creatives? And as I mentioned earlier, where individual artists and creative practitioners go, CCI goes. And that's exactly what brought us into the Web3 space. And I have an inkling is likely what brings many of you here today. You're a little curious, you're a little cautious. And only just a couple years ago, we followed some of our grantees into the space, and we saw reasons to be excited, as well as many reasons to be cautious too, but not just cautious about some of the legal precautions that you're going to hear about today, but also cautious about who's dominating in this space, what exploitative dynamics are being replicated from the current economy, and also the really high barrier of entry. And honestly, today I'm super excited to be a part of chipping away at the barrier of entry today in this learning space. Because honestly, we have two amazing folks who are living and breathing this work on behalf of and in honor of creatives today. They're not trying to sell you on anything, but they're here for the sole purpose of equipping you all with knowledge and resources to decide on if or how you partake in this world for yourself. But just know that CCI is here, we're learning with you. It feels like a whole other language. And we're also advocating for you. And with that, let's continue in the learning. So without further ado, I'm gonna pass the virtual mic to our facilitators, Alex Glancy and Kas Vegas, to introduce themselves and kick us off.
Hello, my name is Kas. Kas Vegas, Vegas like Las Vegas, easy to remember. I'm really excited to talk to you folks today. And so a little bit of a background about me. I'm from Hawaii. I'm half Samoan and then Hawaiian and Puerto Rican. So I grew up in both Hawaii and Samoa. I've been in LA for the last 4 years, and I've been in this beautiful intersection of Web3 and blockchain. I started by growing a community with a few like-minded people that grew to 60,000 members and counting, and it just became a place for education, and I've been enjoying it ever since. I've worked with Netflix through Love, Death, and Robots. We did a drop called Love, Death, and Art with them, Bronze Studios, with Project Gossamer, with Ben Morrow, the Project Huxley, and just continue to grow other communities. Currently, I am the director of Vibes, which is a really fun title, for Oniforce, which is an original anime NFT on the blockchain that has now grown into a company and a lifestyle brand. So that is me.
Awesome. My turn now, I think. So hi, everybody. I'm Alex Glancy. I'm a lawyer at a small firm, and we have a focus on social impact and community wealth building. I'm a transactional lawyer, so I help entrepreneurs, creatives, and others build legal infrastructure for lasting businesses, organizations, and careers. And this often means drawing on expertise in a variety of areas of law that relate to today's topic, and I'll break that down more later. I'm honored to present with Kas. Kas is a leader in this area, an entrepreneur, a musician, community builder, and all around great person to be bringing this information. And so I'm really excited to be here with her. So to give you a little more background on me, I embarked on this research paper for CCI, not because of my interest in the blockchain, but because of my interest in CCI's mission. I have to admit, I was and continue to be a skeptic about most of this technology and frankly resisted investing time to learning about it. But all that changed when I thought about it from the point of view of the people on this Zoom and the mission I share with CCI, which is to support artists with resources, knowledge, and support to achieve more financial self-determination for all artists and especially artists of color. CCI identified this as an area, like Jenny Lynn said, that people had questions about, and one where people have been investing a ton of time, money, and effort, just trying to find information and like experiment with things as much as possible. So I felt like my expertise could bring insight, hopefully in understandable terms, to the CCI artists community about introductory legal matters and be a part of sparking collective learning and information sharing. So I'm so grateful they commissioned me to work on this report, a public comment letter to the US government bodies exploring NFTs, and this presentation. So thanks so much to CCI and to Jenny Lynn for your leadership in this space and this workshop. So a little bit more, I just want to give you more context about how I'm coming to this presentation. So my colleagues and I at our firm, we all aspire to practice community lawyering. So we want our practice of law to be part of a circular feedback loop with our clients and the communities where they come from and seek to serve. So one of the things I work on as a securities attorney a lot is helping people raise capital in different ways that lead to equitable and sustainable businesses, such as cooperatives and non-extractive financing. And then in the area of intellectual property law, like copyrights and trademarks, I was excited about using this as an opportunity to either educate for the first time or re-educate people who kind of forget about these basic principles that are around us. So the topic overall has gotten artists, I think, thinking about some fresh ideas about artists' rights, artist legal protections, different ways of structuring legal relationships with money and people, intellectual property, and of course, resale royalties. All of these ideas are certainly as applicable in the physical world as they are on the blockchain. So no matter where you come out from this workshop on whether the Web3 world is for you, my hope is that by engaging in this workshop, you might be inspired to think in new ways about your artistic practice and ways to structure it when it comes to contracts, intellectual property rights, and capital. And lastly, I want to thank my colleague, Alina Ortiz, who's a law clerk in our office and helped prepare the slides. Alina is an artist and a body worker who works in our office on legal projects. And Alina is an example of someone who, despite not having legal training, has through their curiosity been able to engage with these concepts based on their interest in the solidarity economy. And Alina is here today. So hi, Alina, and thanks for your help with the slides. And let's go. So here's like a little more about my bio you can look at, and then a little bit about our law firm and our practice principles. All right. So then a quick legal disclaimer is that any legal information you get on this presentation should not be taken as personal legal advice. There's really no substitute for talking to an attorney who can look at your facts and circumstances in the context of your whole life and practice. So if you need legal advice, please contact an attorney, and CCI and Kas, we're all invested in making sure that you have those touch points to get the support you need. Also, if you're watching this on a recording, please know that this area is changing really quickly. So some of the information that Kas and I give on the technology and the legal side may be stale or outdated tomorrow. We don't know. So we're keeping track. All right, so the next thing is a temperature check of where people are at and coming into this presentation. So we have a poll. So the question is, who has read the paper that CCI published? Okay. Okay, so it looks like so far a majority of the group has not read the paper, but that's okay. The reason why you should read the paper is because, or consider skimming the paper, is because it talks about a lot of the background law, and we tried our best to make it as easily understandable as possible. And in particular, like if you're thinking of making your own NFT collection, there's important guides on how to think about licensing, important stuff about how securities law works in the space. So it's definitely worth a skim. And there's also text boxes with great case studies and examples that are a good way to grab onto the concept. So even if you just check it out for those case studies, I think it's worth a read.
We will be going over some of those characters together as a group. So even if you want to read the paper after we do that experience, it'll kind of help solidify it in your brain as well.
Okay, so now what Kas and I want to do is talk about a basic glossary to get us all on the same page about some of the words you'll hear us use throughout the rest of the workshop. So Kas, do you want to take us through?
Sure. So we'll just kind of start at the top. Blockchain is a record of transaction distributed across a network. The important part about this is it's as a public ledger, so people can see what is happening, and it is immutable, which means people cannot go in and change it. Contract, the agreement between two or more parties, whether that's in writing or that's oral, it's based on the meeting of the minds. Copyright, a type of intellectual property that protects original works of authorship. We will go to the differences of copyright and trademark because sometimes those things get conflated. A DAO, you may have heard of this. This was the next new buzzword after NFTs, the new buzz acronym, but it's essentially a decentralized autonomous organization. And they're emerging forms of organizing people and resources using blockchain tech. And that includes also governance and voting rights and being inclusive to everyone that is in this type of organization. NFT, non-fungible token. So they have at least these two components, the cryptographic token and the asset associated with the token. And we can break that down further throughout the presentation. Smart contracts. These are computer codes that are stored on the blockchain, and it receives data that triggers the actions based on the conditions program in the code. Trademark, a type of intellectual property that protects words, symbols, or other devices that functions as brand signifiers. And then infringement. It's a violation of the rights of an owner of a copyright or a trademark. So again, we'll be using these terms throughout. Some of these things you may have already heard, but understanding it in the context of Web3, we have to make sure that those are very solid and they don't blur and what is relevant. And I think oftentimes people think it's different in Web3, but really the law is the law and it's not. So that's something we want to get into and make sure these lines don't get blurred.
That's exactly right. So whenever a new technology comes out, it's exciting because as a lawyer, because you know all these background laws, and the question is, how will it apply to that new technology? So you may hear of people saying, oh, I'm a blockchain lawyer or a Web3 lawyer. All that really means is that they have sort of the variety of awareness with different areas that are implicated by this new technology, and kind of keeping up to date with all of the case law evolving in this area. But the areas of law that come up are really like the basics of intellectual property law, securities law, and corporate law. And I'll talk about that a little more later. But for now, we're gonna let Kas take the floor and give you all what you're looking for in terms of the industry update and the exciting uses of this technology.
Awesome. I'm curious for you folks to also maybe write in the chat your industry. Some of you might be in music, some of you might be in film, some of you might be painters, some of you might be software developers. And so there are a lot of use cases depending on your industry. Some of you are teachers. I see visual fine art, academia. That's really exciting. Fashion. That is amazing. Fashion was actually one of the really early use cases of blockchain. For example, if Gucci was in the metaverse, which is basically kind of another iteration of the internet where you can interact, and they saw a big problem in fashion, which was reselling and someone getting, say, like a fake bag and reselling it. Gucci does not get a royalty from someone reselling a bag. They do not get a royalty or any pay if someone makes a fake bag. And so having the actual bag or a tag or a barcode attached to the blockchain will show its authenticity. And you can say, this is a Gucci bag, and it's not a replica, it's not a derivative, it's not a fake. And it could really help save billions of dollars in the industry. So fashion was quite early. And now the use cases for fashion has evolved to digital clothing for your avatars. If you guys ever played Sims or different games like that, or Grand Theft Auto, like now some of these things you can purchase. If you see it in the game and you like it, or you see it in the marketplace, the store, and you like it, you can purchase it and you can get it shipped to you. And again, you have that certificate of authenticity. So yeah, fashion is a really fun one. Music, there are a lot of problems in music in which the artist is not getting paid. So you'll kind of see a pattern no matter what industry you are in of where is funding going and why, and how can we make sure that it is secure and going to the right person, and it's fair and it's equitable. Yeah, so I love what I'm reading in here. Micro mosaic. I would love for someone to give me a lecture on micro mosaic and learn about that. But yeah, these are some things top of mind, and feel free to write questions in there as you write your occupations of how this could maybe apply to you, and we'll address it as we can throughout our presentation. Do you want to go to the next slide, maybe? Okay. There are some really good examples of success stories on the blockchain. And success can mean a lot of different things, right? For this space, some people, they've had life-changing money. For some people, they've had life-changing friends that now, they do everything together, or maybe they started a business together, or they solved a problem together. So success is really in the eye of the beholder of what that means to you. And this space is very robust to offer your version of success. But a couple of examples I can give is through some personal friends and some teams that have really excelled in the industry and have worked to push the gap between what we call Web 2, which is real world, and what we call Web 3, which is just this next iteration of the internet. So Dead Fellas is a very interesting team to follow. Their founder, her name is Betty, and her husband is Syke, and they have an amazing family. What I really love about this team is they're innovative and inclusive. And they've actually been also been very successful with a flywheel of partnerships. So not only have they launched this very interesting IP, you may have heard of them, you may have not, but they kind of look like green zombies, really fun, gender neutral, stylistic PFPs, or profile pictures, for short, PFPs. But they've really had some good, strong partnerships. And they're a team that's been continuing to expose their IP with partnerships like Wrangler Jeans, DraftKings, and the NFL. It's a very exciting brand to look into, to see the success of how they have done good partnerships. Another great success story is an anime inspired art and comic that is going into music, fashion, tech, all of the above. And they're called Oniforce. And so that's actually the current team I work for. I'm the director of vibes there. And one way that they've incorporated a partnership is with Fortnite. And so Fortnite is a pretty big gaming name that allows people to play for free, right? You don't have to pay to play like oftentimes you do to integrate into Web3 sometimes. So they've created a map together of their storyline. It started with these certain characters, and now they have a whole storyline, and they've built out a map. And they're going to, starting November, invite people in to play the game and learn about the lore or the story of that particular company. Another success story is Nyla Hayes. She was, I believe, 12 when she was entering this space. Young girl, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and she was inspired by dinosaurs when she was younger. And she used to call the Bronchiosaurus a long necky. And I really vibed with that because I watched Land Before Time when I was a kid, and they were called long necks. And so we had a great conversation about that. I was like, have you seen Land Before Time? She's like, no, and gave me some other dino cartoon of her age, her generation. But she ended up watching it, so we could kind of like, that was one of our things we're bonding on. But that's what inspired these women that she would draw with long necks, and the art was really beautiful. And she started drawing inspirational women to her, and she became Time Magazine's first artist in residency at about 13 years old, and has been going around the country speaking, continuing her art, and really growing. You know, now she has animations and little shorts, and it's just beautiful to see a young mind, to see her art as a possibility of an occupation and not just a hobby or with that broke artist stigma. So these are three beautiful success stories off the top of my mind. Pretty much the opportunities are endless. And so Alex and I and Jenilyn and CCI Arts are hoping to provide you the tools and the knowledge to have your own version of success. What does that look like to you? We hope to give you the tools to understand it better. Alex, did you want to talk a little bit about some of the recent news?
Sure. So one of the recent stories that you may have heard about is that OpenSea, which is one of the most prominent NFT marketplaces, decided to suspend mandatory resale royalties for creators that minted NFTs there. I'm curious, Kas, like, what was the reaction, since you're more plugged in to like this pretty much everything than I am, but I'm wondering the reaction in the community when this happened.
It was really tough. Yeah. So for some context, like one of the beauties of this space is these trackable royalties and that ability to get paid for your work. If I bought something for $100 from Alex, but then I resold it for $1,000, Alex can have a royalty built into her smart contract that gives her 10% of that new profit that just came off. And that was very exciting for artists, because usually we sell things one time and that's it. It wasn't able to be paid back to us nor tracked and proved. So when this change happened to OpenSea, they changed it to royalties are optional for the buyer to pay the creators. And so that kind of defeated the purpose of, having that income that comes in when somebody resells in perpetuity. And so the community was in uproar. And actually, this has been a back and forth battle where they had it, they didn't, and then they had it again, but now it's optional. So it's very interesting. And they are currently the second largest NFT platform, but there are many other platforms that people go to because they don't necessarily agree with the optional pay. So there are other options out there, but it made big headlines because it is reverse of what we were trying to do in the space.
And one of the takeaways from CCI, the research I did with CCI about like this industry, is that it's really important for creatives to stay up to date and informed on the tech and the terms and conditions of the tech, because you do have a choice in which tech platforms you use. And things like this, where all of a sudden one is doing something that's less favorable to creatives, like everyone should be knowing that and sharing that information and looking for other options, because part of the promise and excitement about all of this technology was resale royalties and was the ability for artists to control more the creative side of their work and also the economics. So one of the things in the letter to the Copyright Office that CCI said was like, we're worried that there would be a consolidation of the tech platforms, leaving creatives with less choice over the terms and conditions they're engaging in, right? So when we go on Instagram, like everyone's on Instagram, we have no leverage to say, you know, we don't like this term in your terms and conditions. I don't want you to have a license to do whatever, you know, with my work. And in the paper, we show sample language from social media licenses to show how broad those tend to be. But yeah, all that is to say, this is something that you do have leverage over as a result of being in a community with information sharing. It's important to have our ears to the ground on that. The other news stories here. So one other one that I saw in the Hollywood Reporter is that Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis were penalized by the SEC for their involvement in hyping up an NFT creative project that the SEC felt was a securities offering that was unregistered. So that's a lot of lingo, but we're going to dig into the securities law issues later. But this is an example of the high profile cases that are coming about from new experiments in this space. And then the last one is Bored Ape Yacht Club, which has one of the most prominent, famous NFT collections, brought a lawsuit against a copycat. The copycat thought it was a satirical commentary on the collection, but Bored Ape Yacht Club disagreed, and the court agreed with Bored Ape Yacht Club. So this is just to touch on the copyright and trademark matters that arise when, you know, here, as in the entire creative world, you know, this comes into play off the blockchain as well. But you can check out that story too.
And I think it's important to note to get these things kind of in prevention mode, right? I feel like people always get lawyers when something bad happens, right? We don't get lawyers before we sign the contract sometimes. We get it after, or before we understand the rules, we get it after. And so, you know, there are good examples and bad examples all throughout Web3. But again, like just thinking about advocacy, people like Alex's firm is what will protect you in the long run, so you don't have to go through these big dramatic events, right? All right, we can go to the next slide. All right, Alex, do you want to kick us off on this portion? And then I'll have it as well.
Yeah, that sounds good. We'll like do this one together. So basically there's I tried to summarize like three main use cases for the people in this room of blockchain. So the first one is just the fact that it's this permanent record that can offer the creative more clear attribution rights, authenticity, and control over creations. The other two ones that are coming up are about just sale of a new NFT collection as a revenue stream, and then also like payment administration. But to start, this one is, I think, it's a less of a like a flashy part of the blockchain, but one that I think could be really useful when it comes to having a token that functions like a certificate of authenticity of your work. So, and this could be for a digital work or something that exists in the physical world. So let's say you are a painter, you have a painting that you're selling. You could have a digital certificate of authenticity, like Kas was saying with the Gucci fashion, right? And if you can control the release of that certificate. So theoretically, you could say, in my practice, I want to sell a painting to whatever collector, but I have a condition. And my condition is that collector cannot submit the painting to a museum that accepts donations from a family that was involved in the opioid epidemic or something. Like, you could basically, whenever you're selling work, you can impose whatever conditions you want generally. And you could use the blockchain as a lever to enforce that contract and those agreements. So Fair Chain is a platform I've heard about in the art world to help artists enforce resale royalties. And I think they have a lot of ways it can be customized. So that's one technology to check out. And then another thing is the blockchain can be an evidentiary record that you're the original creator of something. So when you create a new work, physical or digital, you can upload a JPEG of it, connect it with an NFT and lock it away. And it's like a supplement to copyright. It's not a replacement for it, but it's another thing that you can do to sort of just show with the timestamp of I made this. And if I don't know if any of you are writers like in the WGA or in the screenwriting world, but the Writers Guild has a service like this for screenwriters where you can upload to their I forgot what they call it exactly, but you can submit a script idea or a treatment to their database, also as a supplement to copyright. So it is something that can become important if there's ever a lawsuit. So it's not a replacement for all the existing legal rules, but you can use it to your advantage to give you the fullest protection. Kas, do you have anything to add about like the authenticity or?
Yeah, I think besides the legality of it, it was also a big movement for artists to be not only authentic in themselves, but to be able to prove that. There was a whole movement with it. So people really, really leaned into it. This transparency side of the blockchain was really attractive to artists. And many artists have had works, ripped off and stolen, the difference between being inspired and actually taken advantage of. And so this public ledger really gave a boost of confidence to artists. It didn't matter what medium it was, whether they were native digitally or they were starting to understand different tools, or they were painters or poets. Having your poetry on the blockchain was a whole movement in itself. One of my colleagues, Sarah Script, she does calligraphy. And so we had a group of calligraphers and they were putting their beautiful calligraphy up on the blockchain. And so, yeah, there was an emotional movement with that term authenticity as well.
I think it can also be a way to track your brand online, right? So even if you're doing things that aren't protected by copyright, or you don't care about copyright and you want people to use whatever, if you're like a copyleft or Creative Commons fan, like that's cool, but you could still use the token to show that you're originated this series of work.
Yeah, I mean, we also used it in events. There was something called POAP, which stood for Proof of Attendance Protocol, and you would get a free NFT or piece of art that signified, I went to this event in New York. And people could make their own. Like I met Alex Glancy at this CC Arts presentation, and you could have that forever in your wallet. So there was a lot of interesting use cases of, proof of attendance, proof of participation. It's kind of like getting a stamp in your passport, which I love. Like I always love getting stamps in there and how they overlap. And so that's what a POAP was. And people now do that for some of their NFTs to just say, hey, I was here, I was there.
So then the next use is probably one of the more high profile ones, which is you can create NFTs and sell them and add to your income, right? This is something that's been really hyped up and popular and sort of well known ever since the Beeple, huge sale. I'll let Kas take this one.
Yeah, sure. So it is a potential income stream for you to expand your IP, to kind of hit a new audience, to hit a new consumer, to hit a new world, to make new friends, to monetize different, to think different, to incorporate different types of business mindsets to something that you may have had in the traditional marketplace, or maybe to bring over some of your traditional knowledge into the space. That was one of my favorite parts of when I was onboarding different artists. There were painters and curators that had so much knowledge about art itself, whether that was fine art or there were sculptors. All of that knowledge is really important to bring into what was more a digital type of space, and just broaden, both the artist and the consumer's attraction to what NFTs could do. So that goes into the next point of building communities. And sometimes it was very difficult to translate. You could have 100,000 followers on Instagram, but now there's this new space and you're trying to bring them over. And sometimes you get a whole new group of communities and fans that see your work that you never had on Instagram, or didn't utilize that tech as much as they do this tech. And so building communities is very much so finding that core tribe. And the beauty about this space is, I'll give an example as a musician. As a musician, if you put a song on Spotify, you'll get paid 0.0003 cents per stream. So say you get to 1 million streams, that's only $3,000, which is sometimes the cost to just record the song, let alone not including marketing. Say you wanted to make a music video to then get it spread out even more. On top of that, your pay comes in 6-9 months later, sometimes a year. And so there are often gaps with musicians of getting paychecks. And it's very difficult to kind of plan your next thing. And so finding a space in which I say, hey, my song's not worth 0.003 of a penny. My song is worth $100 or $1,000 or $10,000. I spent $10,000 making it, and people can actually buy it at that cost or whatever your value is as the artist. And it gives two things: more control of how you value yourself, but secondly, what your community, your fans, your audience, your friends are also willing to support. So you can find your true fans, your super fans in these sub communities, besides just what Spotify allows us to get. The resale royalties, that's another very interesting intersection. And so I put question mark because it's yes, but it's selective due to which platform you're using. So they will have different codes that say we automatically pay this percentage, or we have to go in and click a button and allow it to be paid, or we don't support that, or it's optional. So we have to, make sure you're doing your research and reading up on what is actually going on the back end when I'm buying art, and thinking of the creator as you're buying this piece and understanding what goes back to them is important to certain collectors too. We want to support artists. There are other interesting things that are dynamic meaning if I walk by the screen that has my NFT and maybe it's a sunny day outside, my NFT can change to being a sunny day. And maybe if it's a rainy day, the mood gets a little darker and it's a rainy NFT, and it just kind of creates mood in your home. So there are different interesting dynamic NFTs that change with weather, different things that the creator will attach it to. Some can change over time. Some can disappear or self-destruct. Another music example could be, hey, I want my voice to be out there, but only for the next 3 months. And if this license is not utilized in 3 months, then it disappears. And so there you can gamify and make things very interesting according to your needs, what you do. Yeah. And the last piece I have here is just burns. There are also ways to create scarcity. So for example, if I did a collection of 10,000, but there was a mechanism in which we can burn some of these NFTs and make it, 9,999. It's a little bit more rare. Or maybe we burned 1,000 and now you're the only 9,000 holders. And so it sometimes can increase the value, or again, just create a gamification for the community to enjoy. So it's really up to you. It gets nuanced, but it's a very incredible space to be in and a time to be in.
One more thing about resale royalties is that this is something that can happen in the physical world too. So I've been working on a project to get contracts to visual artists to have resale royalties even off the blockchain, but that can be linked to the blockchain. But it's not a new idea. And in the paper, we go into the history a little bit. And some countries have resale royalties as an automatic right under the law, but in the US, we don't. And it can only be accomplished through private contract. So the last use case to touch on briefly, and then I think we have to switch gears a little bit, is just the blockchain as a way to administer payments. So like, and have fractional ownership. So ways to automate transfers of funds, administer royalty streams in a transparent way. I wanted to give you an example. This is also covered in the report, but the musician Lil Pump sold royalty interest in his song called Mona Lisa, and this was all done in compliance with securities laws, but now the royalties are paid out through the blockchain. So I think that's a good case study to check out. Kas, anything on this point?
Not on this point, but I did see a question in a question/concern from the group message. And so I kind of wanted to address that real quick, which was just referring to how rapidly the space is growing and how time consuming it is to onboard. We're going through a 2-hour, presentation with you folks, but it takes a long time to understand these things. So it's a legitimate and valid concern. I think for me, what I like to usually educate on is kind of the community aspect and the decentralized assets in the sense of knowledge, learning from one another, each one teach one. And it's going to take a while for people to actually understand it well themselves. And I find that certain groups make it a bit easier to stay up to date so that you don't have to be day to day in the grinds. Even though it moves fast, if you actually zoom out a bit and take some time, there'll be moments where everyone's sorting things out and there'll be a better answer, over time. So it's rapid right now. I totally agree. But having an in-person community as well helps with kind of just talking about some of these terms that maybe our families don't know. Sometimes my parents look at me like I have 7 heads when I'm trying to explain this, and it took a very long time and they're still learning. But in terms of the people that are really deep in this with me, it's a place of refuge for me to talk out ideas, to see what's happening, to collaborate. Twitter Spaces is a great, or X now is a great space where you can hear people talk about current events and what is going on. So For the bandwidth comment, it's really up to you on your own bandwidth. Like, remember to take care of your personal health, to drink water. I have my water right here for this presentation. Take breaks, because it is a lot. It is a lot. And I'm based in LA, and every Thursday they have something called IRL Alpha. Alpha just referring to like the latest updates or news that hasn't hit the news yet. And every Thursday we come together, there's a panel, there's mics in the audience for people to also ask throughout the panel. And it's awesome. It's in Venice. It's every Thursday. So, and you can go maybe once a month if every Thursday is too much. But I would say find things in your community, wherever you're based, where you can have a little bit of comfort to talk to like-minded people. And then have your space as well where you're not thinking about it. As we sort it out, as lawyers are sorting it out, take a break and come back. So that's my advice to Tanya.
Also, I think this group here is like an organizing space. So if you have something that you need or want, and you're like, I'm interested in this aspect of all the uses that Kas talked about, like say that, and maybe you could get a group together and like pool resources to pay for Kas to consult with you, or like get a lawyer to consult for you, or ask CCI to make a program about that. Like, I think there's a lot of room to just be responsive to what your concerns are, and a lot of people interested in providing that support. So definitely speak up about these things.
So these are some questions that were noted from you folks, actually. And thank you to CCI Arts and Jenilyn for pulling some of them out in front for us. So we'll go through some of these. And as we mentioned, you can write in the sidebar as well. How healthy is the NFT market nowadays? I like this question. This also depends on what angle you're coming at, right? Is it healthy for artists? Is it healthy for, creators, collectors, financially, right? So there was a big event that happened that kind of threw off a lot of, it scared away a lot of either investments, and sometimes on the creative side. We go through different seasons called the bull and the bear, and the bull is where things are thriving, everything's going smoothly, financials are going well. And then you have the bear where it's like not everyone's buying right now, or it feels like it's down, similar to but different from like the stock market. So with these different seasons, that's where, depending on when you have entered, it could seem either gloomy or very exciting. And then it's like, what happened? It was exciting when I came in and now it's gloomy. But to people that have tirelessly worked in this space, the bear market is where we always build. It's where we learn from consumer price actions, where we learn from how can we make this tech more user-friendly. That's one of my big passions. Is this is complicated things, and how do we make it user-friendly? How do we take away some of the jargon? How do we make it not so expensive? Certain blockchains will be more expensive than others just to participate. And these are the conversations and things that we go over in the bear. So the healthy part, it really depends on, again, those different angles. So overall, I would say it's doing really good during this bear market because people are partnering with a bit more outside branding that kind of helps the overall consumer. For example, Pudgy Penguins was a project that started, got taken over by a new owner and founder that's risen the project to do a partnership with Walmart, in which they have these plush little cute penguins in over 2,000 locations, 2,000 Walmarts. So they're, again, these building phases, they really expand when we're in the bear markets. That kind of goes to the second point of what are some new avenues for art distribution and sales. Pudgy Penguins, again, is the one that has the plushes, and they're opening up to different markets. Bored Ape Yacht Club also has a deal like that with one of the apes. They have a run of t-shirts that are across multiple Walmarts as well. So it's very interesting to see how it gets integrated, and it's being formed in front of our eyes as well. Do you want to talk about DAOs, Alex?
Sure. How are we doing on time, Danielin?
We have like maybe another minute or so to spend on this slide, and then we can always circle back to these questions too at the end.
Okay, got it. How do DAOs intersect with performance-based art forms and democratizing or flattening funding structures? It's a really good question. I would love to talk to this person specifically to see like what they're getting at, because it sounds like a certain idea for a project. But I would say that there are as we said before, like DAOs is a little bit of a buzzword, and I'm not sure that it's necessarily the only way to accomplish what you're trying to do. Like there are organizations off the blockchain like Open Collective that allow for transparent payment and nonprofit structures. So I think I'll leave it at that, but I'm not sure what else to say on this one for now, but we can talk another time about it too.
Yeah, Alex, I'll just I'll note the last two questions and we can keep moving.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so now we've had an introduction to all the opportunities, I think, on the blockchain, and you may still have questions we can get to at the end. Now we're going to launch into a little more of the cautious part. So like we're curious about the blockchain and we're also cautious. And so this is where I'm going to talk a little more about the legal risks and things to be aware of in this when you're entering the blockchain. So I have this quote to kind of set us up for this part of the presentation. So this is a quote from David Foster Wallace. There are these two young fish swimming along, and they happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way, who nods at them and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the two young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually one of them looks over at the other and goes, "What the hell is water?" So this is about how we're in the world, we're in the US, there's all these background laws and default rules that we're swimming in. And sometimes we don't even know what those are and how they affect us. But I think what the blockchain and NFT news stories have shown is that they come up and they're important. And so my hope is that from this part of the presentation, you can get some primer, some base to know when to start looking for legal issues and when you might need to talk to a lawyer. But the intent is not to give you all the information. So it really is more interactive to give you a sense of like the practice and like case studies and how you might think about the law interacting with what you're doing. So this is the water, right? Like in all the different areas of the blockchain industry, you have NFTs, DAOs, smart contracts, and then on the right, like the different areas of law that make up the background of what you need to be thinking about when you're doing any of these things, right? So NFTs get into securities law compliance, understanding your intellectual property that you hold as a creator, and also contract law, because you're selling and you're purchasing or selling property. Smart contracts, also a lot of confusion about that, and contract law, which we can talk about. And then DAOs, it's really just an organization, people coming together, which is when you get into corporate law and the rules around all being a part of a larger group. So it's like corporations, LLCs, corporate law. So I know most of you didn't read the paper, so just to give us all a little bit of a primer, I'm going to quickly run through some basic legal principles that are in the water around us. And these are important because they're hints to help you get through the activities that we're going to do after the break. So copyright is automatic for original works of authorship, and registration with the US Copyright Office has important benefits. So definitely think about this, and there's resources for how to do this. And it's generally easy and inexpensive. So what I want you to take away from some of this is like, there are easy steps you can do to be able to compete in this big world of IP rights holders. Some of them have a lot more money than the typical individual creative. So copyright registration is an easy thing you can do to set yourself up for success. when you have a copyrighted material, it can be licensed in part or transferred all out. So license is another word for a license is permission, right? So I'm lending you permission to use my work, and you can have all kinds of conditions to that. The other thing you can do is just transfer the copyright all out and say, this is no longer mine, this is now your property. If you've given someone permission to use your material and there's nothing written down, then you have what's called an implied license under the law, and that's really murky. Another thing to know is that web terms and conditions almost always contain license language, especially if you're submitting anything to a website. There's going to be license language in the fine print. A security, when I talk about securities laws, it's like stock, debt, or any other arrangement where someone invests money with an expectation of profits from the efforts of others. Most NFTs with a single owner and only one unique asset are unlikely to be securities. So, out there. And then a few more things. In the world, if you're building a business with someone without a legal entity, you may have a default partnership. And if you have a default partnership, you could be personally liable for the acts of the business and the acts of your partners. Trademark rights rely on the owner of the brand monitoring and pursuing infringement. If you don't monitor unauthorized uses of your brand, you could lose your trademark rights. And trademark registration with the US Patent and Trademark Office is an easy way to set yourself up for success with your brand. The last one is contracts freely entered between private parties are enforceable by courts unless illegal or counter to public policy. And I wanted to say this because private contracting is actually an incredible opportunity to create the values and world you want to operate in. So, for example, like maybe discrimination laws in the US are not satisfactory. They don't go far enough for how you want to have a racially just world. In your private contracts with others, you could potentially put conditions around values, codes of conduct, minimum requirements for like diversity in hiring with your counterparty or other things that you want to impose in your relationship. So that was a lot of lingo. Thanks for your patience with like not getting into the details, but hopefully some of it stuck and will come into play later and we can always review. So before we go on a break, I'm going to leave this here as like the 3 stories we're going to engage with. These are 3 people I came up with when I was writing the paper. They are fake people, but they have interesting stories, I think, to like interact with. And we'll do that the rest of the time. But does anyone on the call maybe want to volunteer to read about Abe, Dee, or Crystal?
Sure, I can read.
Okay, great.
I'll be Abe. Abe is an emerging fine artist. Abe is represented by a gallery in New York and promotes himself online through his website and social media. Abe's main goal right now is to increase exposure for his work by creating digital collectibles. Abe would be thrilled if these collectibles supplemented his income. That's like most of us artists.
Thank you. Can we get a volunteer for Dee?
Cool, I'll go ahead. Dee is an animator. Dee is interested in NFTs to explore generative art as a medium. Dee has created a collection of NFTs called Crypto Rats, which consists of cartoon rats, each with its own personal characteristics. Dee is excited about creating a community around the crypto rats.
Thank you. And one last volunteer for Crystal.
Okay, Crystal. Crystal is a freelance graphic designer who is passionate about technology and cryptocurrency, participating in several DAOs. Crystal's main goal right now is to get involved with the DAO communities with the hope of building wealth through cryptocurrency and crypto investment opportunities.
Thank you. So now we have a poll of which of these characters do you relate to the most? All right, so we have a majority of folks identify with Abe, and then fewer for D, and then some for Crystal. So that's really helpful. When we get back from the break, we're gonna dig into all of these stories and what happens to these characters and their journeys through the blockchain. So we'll be back, right, Jenny Lynn? Anything?
Yes. So you're gonna get 5 minutes. 5 minutes, perfect timing. We'll be back at 11:10.
It's
if you're
water,
on
y'all.
Pacific Coast.
Okay, so what's gonna happen now is we're gonna go through Abe's awful discovery and what happened to Abe. So we'll do this exercise and then we're gonna go in breakout rooms to talk about Dee and Crystal's stories. But this is to give us all a chance to discuss this story and get a sense of the exercise. So it's another story time. Does anyone want to read this story out loud?
Well, I'm Abe, so I feel like I have
Okay,
to
yeah.
now. Abe's awful discovery. Abe creates a digital composition and attaches it to an NFT. He intends that collectors should only be able to use the image in the context of personal display in their smart wallet and reselling the NFT within a single NFT marketplace. But one day, Abe's friend Betty spots Abe's artwork shown on an LCD screen in a different NYC gallery than the one that represents him. On top of that, it's being shown alongside artwork he finds to be poor quality compared to his work. Abe has mixed emotions. He's excited that he's getting exposure in another gallery, but disappointed he's being shown in a gallery without his permission or knowledge by an anonymous purchaser of his NFT. He had agreed to exclusive representation of this gallery, so now he's worried he may have breached his agreement. He also feels regret that he hadn't written NFT license terms that prohibited gallery displays without his permission. Oh, God. Yeah, that sucks.
Okay.
You're on mute. Oh, there we go. Gotcha.
Okay, so yeah, it's sad. I wonder how people are feeling. AK, it seems like you're feeling for Abe.
Well, I mean, yeah, and it's hard, I hate as an artist myself when people shrug their fucking shoulders that should have gotten a lawyer, like, fuck you, it's not that easy. And they don't make lawyers easy, they don't make them accessible or affordable, like shit's hard. And then don't blame the victim, like we always do that in our society.
Mm-hmm. That's real, totally. Anyone else want to share responses to the story?
This also happens with likeness and image, not just your artwork. People do this with artist names and leverage it and say they're on their platform to get more eyes, or they're going to speak at this conference. So it goes beyond just artistry, and it's definitely something to be aware of and hopefully not just run into it, right? Like, oh no, there it is, So it's very tricky for sure.
I'll weigh in here. I feel like what this comes back down to is communication. And if I was Abe, I would pick up the phone and call that gallery and say, hey, are you aware that you're using my work without permission? let's have a conversation about that, because I would hate to have to get litigious with you. Can you just take it down and can we move on? Because then you get all kinds of information in that one very simple conversation. And sometimes it could actually turn into a partnership, or it could open up in another way. So rather than everybody immediately going to the legal route, sometimes just picking up the phone and actually talking to somebody can go a long ways. So that's where I go with this.
Yeah, I like the action points. I think that's something we can also converse about, is like, now we have this scenario, where do we go from here? You know, what is the smart way to do it, whether you have legal representation or not? What are some action steps? Alex and anyone on the floor, I'll leave this open to.
Yeah, these are all great points. Let's get into a little bit of what we had prepared of what did Abe learn from this, and I think everything you touched on is really good. So one of Abe's lessons is Abe owns copyright in his composition. This may be obvious to a lot of you, but I just want to put it out there, you know, like to get us all on the same page, that he created a digital work and automatically has copyright in that work. And then to Kas's point, he also has right, you know, name and likeness rights, which I didn't really prepare to talk about on this presentation, but I think getting savvier about that stuff is also very important for artists. So copyright ownership is automatic when he created the work. He should register his copyright with the US Copyright Office, because it'll make his life so much easier when this happens. So registration is generally pretty simple. It's $45 more or less for one work. There's also an initiative happening through the Copyright Alliance right now, where if you're BIPOC, you can get your copyright registration fees covered and assistance in registering your first copyright. So I have a link to that. But the reason why that's important is because in order to bring a lawsuit at all, you need to have a registration first. It costs a lot of money to do an expedited registration. And big companies know this, and they know that if you don't actually have a registration yet, you're not going to be able to sue them yet. Also, if you register early before infringement occurs, you get access to attorney's fees being covered and extra damages. So it makes the cost of pursuing infringement much more affordable, because you can get your costs reimbursed. So this is something to be aware of and explore for all your copyrighted materials, but especially those that you think are at risk of infringement or that you care about dearly. So also, Abe is an IP rights holder. Abe can think about himself as someone with an IP portfolio, like any business owner would, and think about the strategy of that he's taking with his IP rights, copyright, trademark, name, and likeness. So even if he decided to share his work freely, if he doesn't care about copyright at all, which some people don't, you could still make that decision consciously and use a Creative Commons license, or think more about trademark or whatever. So then the second lesson is, without a clear license plan, Abe lost some control over the uses of his work. Now, even if you have the clearest license language in the world, someone's probably still going to use it wrong, right? It's just like there's a lot of misunderstandings and it's complicated, right? But here, Abe had an opportunity to dig into this a little more before he minted his NFT. So without anything in writing, you've got an implied license, where if this were ever in court, the court would look at the whole facts and circumstances, and the court would say, what did Abe intend? What did the other party expect? This is probably, you know, fine or not fine. And it's all very murky and still developing. What is the implied license with an NFT? But what Abe could look at is the NFT marketplace and its terms and conditions. The terms and conditions may contain a license Abe gave to the platform that the platform then gave to the purchaser. It could have information about that. Again, reading terms and conditions is like painful. Like it really is hard. And so one of the takeaways I think that we made in the paper is there needs to be more plain language and information sharing among creatives about what the terms and conditions say, so that we don't all have to spend time reading them all the time. It's just, no one should have to do that themselves. Anyway, it's harder for Abe to pursue infringement under a murky license than with a clear license. Even if the court would ultimately side with him over the murky license, it's more complicated and expensive to get to that point than if you had clear language of this is right and this is wrong. Then another thing is Abe has contractual obligations that he's a part of. He's got this gallery contract. He's got terms and conditions he signed with, when he clicked the box on the platform, on the marketplace, he signed them. So he is already existing in this web of contract, even if he doesn't think about it consciously, but that's another lesson from this story. And then, as Charlene was saying, kind of like you pick up the phone, it's like Abe may have learned that it's good to know who's purchasing his artwork and who's on the other end, because it's important to have that line of communication. And I know that the identity of collectors of art is not always easy to find out in the art world, and people have a lot of different feelings about that. Galleries have different feelings about that, right? But that's something that I think Abe might be reflecting on after this experience. So all of these lessons apply off the blockchain too. So even if you are never going to make an NFT, I hope that this still kind of gets you thinking about your rights in the content you create and your contract.
Alex, really quick, there was a question I feel like is real specific to this in the chat, which was, do we copyright each painting?
Generally, yes. There's a ton of self-help resources at the Copyright Office and a hotline with super helpful people where you can call them and ask, like, do I do each painting, or is there a group registration available? There's group registration available for photographers that's more affordable. So you can definitely contact them and feel free to use those resources. And check out the Copyright Alliance too. The Copyright Alliance has a lot of good information. Okay. Okay, so now I think we're doing breakout rooms, right? Oops.
Yes, so we got to practice talking these like scenarios out all together as a group, and now you as participants will get to choose which story you get to dive into with Alex and Kas. So we talked about each person. So we have Abe, we have Dee, we have Crystal, and now you get to choose if you would like to talk about Dee's situation or Crystal's situation. And if you recall, Dee is the animator wanting to use NFTs as a medium and gets into a sticky situation with that. Crystal is the freelance graphic designer who's interested in DAOs for building wealth and investment, and also gets into a sticky situation with that. So is there anything else that Alex or Kas you want to say before I give choice for our participants to choose which room to go to?
No, excited to break out. Did you want me to drop the link after you break the room?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Wonderful. And just so you all know, you're gonna get about, let's see, how are we on time? We'll have about 10 minutes or so in the breakout rooms, and you'll get notices from me, from the Zoom powers telling you about timing. And also, the breakout rooms are not recorded, so feel free to ask all the questions too. Right, so you should see the rooms at the bottom right pop up for you to be able to choose which room you go to. Let me know. This is a little bit of a new function, so bear with me. Cool, I see some people joining. Right.
Not sure.
Trying again.
Sorry.
You're good. Juicy takeaways.
Yeah, we had a very juicy room. We talked about rug pulls, and that was a new term to a lot of the people in our group. And some of the results were like shocking. So we had some great questions about expectations and sustainability and speculation. And so yeah, we had a lot of juicy takes, and I really also loved the conversation that is it AI or Al that was bringing in about the traditional world that actually does rug pulls too. And so he was kind of explaining different ways of how that happens today. You know, some of these behaviors translates over, but this is where we can actually have some accountability with the blockchain to not, to kind of reprimand these bad actors and not let this continue into this world.
I saw a hand up, but I didn't catch who put their hand up and then put it back down really quickly. Was there someone else that wanted to share?
It was me.
Go on, Jasmine.
Yeah, I was in Cassandra's group, so that's why I put it down really fast. But I also liked the talk about like just being very specific in your language when it comes to NFTs. And I had asked a question about like I'm a painter, so if I sell the physical version of the NFT that I'm selling versus do I sell it to the person who's buying the NFT or am I selling it to someone else? So just being specific in the language of the NFT itself, saying like you get the physical version or you don't, was helpful.
So do we want to, is it okay to hop into the lessons from Dee's demise, Alex?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Just to kind of update the group, because we did have our breakout, Dee had the Crypto Rats project. He was telling the group this will go to the moon, that he has big plans for everyone. He sold 500, but then he got a new job. He took out all his crypto, turned it to regular US dollars, and kind of moved on and shut down the Discord channel, which is a place where sometimes a lot of communities are built and you communicate about the project. Later, kind of forgot about the project. He just left those people hanging. And US authorities said, you are coordinating a rug pull, harming investors, and violating securities laws. So Dee now has to spend a lot of money on defense attorneys that they don't have, and regrets not consulting with advisors about the project. So the lessons here, we'll go over together, and I'll let Alex hop in on any legal side as well. Dee entered securities law territory when they hyped it up and kind of insinuated profits and value and participated in the speculation. An important distinction that I mentioned in my group, Gabriel had a great question that said, is speculation part of, participating in this space? And my answer to that was, there will always be speculation of what something is worth, but what's important to note is you, the founder or the creator, should not be in the speculation part of hyping something up and promising investment and promising value, because in that sense, people buy because of the promises. And if you don't fulfill those promises or meet those expectations, that's where it's hitting the security law territory. So yes, there's speculation, but should you as the founder push that forward? Absolutely not. That's the danger territory. The next point on here for some lessons for Dee is that this is actually a very highly intensive type of space you can get into if you're starting to collect all these different people. And the work really begins not just when you start the project, but after that first purchase and after that next purchase and building that out. I also mentioned the distinction of, is this an artist that you're supporting with a few pieces and collections, or is this a Web3 native company that then turns into an LLC or an S Corp or something a lot bigger, in which, again, you have to understand expectations on both sides to the sustainability of that business model. Sometimes people buy an NFT and then they're like, and now what do I get from you? Like, and sometimes people can't afford to continuously run that out. So just being conscious of like, what are your intentions going in as an artist? Is this to expand your artistry, or is this to build a company? And just thinking about that before going in. And sometimes that shifts. A lot of art projects started as a project and turned into lifestyle brands and turned into something they wanted to take to the next level, or some projects have been acquired. And then those business minds have come in and turned it into a full-on brand. Would you want to hop in on anything here on securities law specifically, Alex, and some of the violations?
Yeah, it's a complex area. We've kept it very high level. It's the art market in the physical world inherently is speculative. Like, collectors are buying up art to flip all the time. So in the public comment letter that CCI submitted, it's like that fundamental dynamic exists off the blockchain. So being on the blockchain shouldn't suddenly subject artists to more legal risk than exists already in the physical world. But it's more coming into play with like these collections that could be where like people are buying a part of a brand or a project that could be profitable. So just to really quickly touch on Crystal's conundrum, then we're going to switch gears. Crystal contributed to a collective DAO project to create textbooks about crypto. And she contributed one portion of the textbook, and it turned out that her co-authors completely plagiarized an existing academic article. So the DAO and all the participants were sued for copyright infringement. So one of the lessons that Crystal learned was about how business entities are important to insulate folks from legal risk. So you should definitely feel free to ask a DAO, like you would approach any other company or organization you're collaborating with about what's going on the legal side: tax, employment, independent contractor agreements, ownership obligations, and IP rights. And also, an interesting thing we talked about in our group is like collaborating with people with shared expectations and values. And a lot of the language in like Web3 is talking about community, ownership. But if you don't feel that, and if you feel vulnerable and like a typical consumer, that's a problem. You should trust that and feel like you deserve true feelings of ownership, information, and transparency. So you can definitely feel like you can ask those questions. Okay. So I just wanted to touch on, as we conclude here, that CCI wrote this letter to the US Copyright and USPTO. It's a quite thorough letter that goes over all the uses that they see creatives doing on the blockchain, as well as tips for advocacy and the further work that's needed. So just a few highlights are creative space barriers to informed entry into blockchain technology. So like anyone in the crypto space could say, it's so easy, you just open a smart wallet, you just do this, but like there is a real high barrier to being informed and doing it in the right way. So that's something that CCI wants to help with through workshops like this to help bring education and technical assistance. They also suggested consider passing a law requiring plain language disclosure of important provisions from terms and conditions. So that means like have it upfront in easy language, like tell us what the license is, please, so that we don't have to scroll all the way down here and read it ourselves. The development of standard, easy to use license types that don't require a lawyer to write, but like are kind of like the Creative Commons system, so that it's easier for creatives to put their own license terms where possible. And then more information, technical and legal assistance, and self-help resources are needed. So definitely in the survey after this, like please let us know what you're looking for, what you need, what you like your reactions to this workshop and where you want to go next with this, because I think we're all excited to hear from you about that. So here are a few resources. I'll send these out after the presentation. The first one is the Copyright Alliance initiative to promote diversity in copyright, which could give you access to free copyright registration. So check that out. The Copyright Small Claims Board is like a small claims court for copyright infringement, and this is new. So it's something to know about if your work has been infringed, and it doesn't require lawyers. Creative Study is a cool organization that's building a library of legal resources. I don't think they have one on blockchain yet, but it's good background information on IP and legal entities. The Water and Music NFT Contract Builder is a tool for musicians to pick and choose their license language with NFTs. The Artist Contract site is a site I'm working on to give free contract templates to artists. So you could check that out. And we're working on a gallery agreement, but the ones that are there right now, it's like a cease and desist letter, a resale royalty contract for selling art, and a commission agreement. And then this is a link, these two links are to the Copyright Office and the USPTO. And these are, they are pretty friendly to the public. So you can definitely just call and they'll walk you through things. And then when it comes to legal resources, you can definitely reach out to me. If I can help you, I can tell you more about that. And also if I think you'd be a good fit for other attorneys I know, like I know a colleague in Colorado that helps form DAOs a lot. And there are other sort of contacts I have. So I think we can combine, like Kas, me, Jamilin, like we all can help point you to the right legal support. Oh, we forgot to put Kas's contact information here.
Yeah, no worries.
Put it in the chat.
I'll put it in the chat.
Kas, do you want to share a little bit about Blue Water Solutions, and then we'll jump into questions, and then we'll wrap it up today.
Sounds good. So I just dropped my info in the chat, KSV Consulting. As Alex mentioned, we are here to help you folks. It's going to take a bit to kind of get your feet wet into this space. So we want to be here to support that. The Blue Water Solutions and Blue Water, that is also new. We talked about today at OpenSea how they are removing creator royalties or making it optional. Blue Water has created tech in which you can actually protect those royalties and you can guarantee get those back. They also have automated payments in which your smart contract is also your contract. So if we have a contract together and that's signed, the code will automate every NFT or whatever decision we make, whatever percentage that is, you get the split right away and you get exactly what we agree to in the actual contract. So that's very new. The code is now supporting the wording, and you don't have to rely on me to be a good or a bad actor to pay you or not. It just splits automatically. So there are a lot of great benefits to this new tech, and feel free to message me and we can do demos and discovery calls. But yeah, we're here to support.
Ooh, thank you so much, Kas. Okay, so I see, Akila, you have your hand up, but before I go over to you, we do have some questions that were put in the chat. One was actually, it was a little bit of a double question, which is, could either of you speak to the environmental impacts of NFTs? What's your insight on NFTs and the impacts on our environment? But also, can you also talk about, like, how can we be mindful of it as practitioners wanting to make use of NFTs?
No, that's a really great question. And that used to come up quite often at the beginning of this space. And what are the implications and the impact of that? And so I can probably put some resources in here because it was a bit of a debate that maybe didn't have as much steam as it seemed as if it did. And so I think that's when I'll put a resource because it could be a long conversation.
Anything you'd add, Alex? No? All right. And then, Loris, You put like 3 different questions in the chat. I'm going to ask you to maybe prioritize one. Do you want to just go unmute? I can remind you of the questions that I noted for you. Or
yeah, that sounds good.
okay, so the questions you had asked was speaking more to single owner or unique asset, regarding security, NFTs having been tied to gas market and oil corporations, or NFTs being used for funding nonprofits and charity applications. Do you want to put it in your own words, which one you choose?
Yeah, I think the first one is probably talked about in the worksheet that you guys sent or in the reading. So I'm gonna defer to a different one. Maybe, yeah, let's talk about if NFTs have been used to raise funding for nonprofits and charity applications, and potentially like how many people can support one NFT, or can it be a collaborative, like, you know, a collaborative thing that creates community that way?
Yeah, I'll speak on one piece of that. Definitely the charity aspect was another early incentive for people to want to support. And it's also important to note that like crypto donations can be tax-free. That's some things that people maybe did not understand yet or not know yet. One of the difficulties with incorporating charities and NFTs was actually just charities not having wallets, not having the wallets to accept crypto. And then also kind of the stigma behind crypto. So it made it difficult to partner with certain charities versus if you just made them a wallet, like you want to make sure you're making your own wallet, because the saying goes, not your keys, not your crypto. And so anyone can say, I'm donating to the Red Cross, and then they're keeping all of it, you know? So being mindful that you have to make sure those pieces are transparent and in place, and how to disseminate that funding to the right place. And then for affordability, there's this thing called party bids, where you can have multiple people all chime in to buy one NFT. So if it was something that was expensive, you could, as a group, bid together and have that kind of collective ownership and be a part of that as well. So there was a lot of interesting dynamics where the tech is allowing people to participate in different ways.
Thanks so much, Cass. All right, and with that, I'll kick it over to you, Akila. You can go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Hello. Hey, can you hear me?
A little bit.
A little bit.
Okay. Yeah, so I have a question regarding, I don't know if anyone here, thank you, first of all, thank you so much for posting this. I've learned a lot. I'm kind of new to the NFT and crypto space, but I recently got selected as an artist to feature in the Season 3 Artisan Fund. I'm not sure if any of you guys have heard of it, but like, how would you guys approach dealing with those kind of initiatives? And also, like, someone new to the field or the space, like, what would you suggest for us to, you know, get our artifacts or NFTs sold through funds like that?
Yeah, I'll chime in first, and then I'll let Alex add to that. First of all, congratulations for.
Would you mind repeating what you heard the question as being? So, because it was really hard to hear.
Okay, so Akila just got selected to be a part of the Artisan Fund. And so I wanted to congratulate her. And she asked about kind of like how to get her work out there. And she's new to the space. So just kind of some general advice as well. And so I wanted to first say congratulations for being selected for that. That's awesome. Secondly, you want to understand the relationship between the fund, the company, the platform, and how they're also working with you, right? So some platforms, they will help you promote. They will help you promote. They'll put you on their socials. They'll give you copy to write. They'll include you in articles. And others will say, hey, we're actually leveraging you and your amazing following to bring light to our platform. And so just understanding and making sure you're not being extracted is something you always want to keep in mind. What's the mutual benefit, and what are they offering me with me being an artist on their platform? And just understanding that we have this shift of power as an artist. It's not just visibility is one way. And so, yeah, that's my advice to you, is understanding what is Artisan offering besides the funds to help you be an artist. Are they helping you market? Just what are the expectations you have of each other so that it feels fair to you as an artist?
That's great. Thank you so much.
No problem. And I mean, a real life example, there was a platform called Foundation that used to have a 15% like commission from your art pieces. And in the general art world, that sounds amazing, right? It's usually 40 to 60% that goes to the museum or the gallery. So 15% sounds awesome. But in the Web3 space, it felt very high to people. The highest range was maybe like 30, but OpenSea was offering 2.5% as a commission. So that's why a lot of people kind of went to that platform. But with the Foundation platform, they actually lowered that percentage. And that's the power of the creators. Creators were not going to create on that platform with that high percentage of 15%, and they dropped it all the way to 5%, I believe, as a commission. So just understanding your power as an artist, and collectively, all of us as artists and creators, it does make a difference in this early stage of this tech of like, what are we expecting here?
Thank you so much. So we are now at the end of our time together. Oh my goodness. Honestly, that 2 hours flew by. I just want to co-sign, reiterate, share your stories with us. We are here. We're all learning this together. And I did put this in the chat earlier, but CCI is actually collecting stories of folks and their experiences with in the NFTs place. So I'm putting this in the chat again. And then of course, please, please, please fill out our evaluation. We really do look at it. We take it to heart. It'll know how to prioritize our time. And what you can expect from us is we'll be sharing the resource list that you saw. It sounds like we might add a couple more resources to it. We'll see, just based off of this conversation. The recording of this will be put up on our YouTube by early next week, but I'll also email it to you since we have all of your contact. And with that, I'm going to invite all of us to just say thank you to Kas and Alex. You can either show your gratitude through the chat, use that clap hand reaction. Just thank you both so much for the generosity of your time, your knowledge, and just all of the work that you do to protect us artists and work on behalf of us. So thank you.
Thank you all as well. Yay. Don't be strangers. Keep in touch.
Thanks for engaging in the activities, and thanks so much to CCI again for hosting this and providing this resource.
All right. See you folks later. Thank you. Bye.